Hi, I am M. Roblin. Listen, can you hear that? The frogs are out. Welcome to my beautiful home office, Bali tropic style. No, listen, I'm just off of a super intensive workshop with a group of executives where we did not hold back. We're talking fearless, courageous, vulnerable conversations. Definitely a lot more to say about that, but I'm committed to having a different kind of vulnerable, honest, uncomfortable conversation, which is to really bring this series of bite-sized videos around this topic of limited beliefs kind of to a close here. As promised yesterday, when we started looking at the how to decipher in kind of like the inner mess, the inner dialogue, and how to decipher is the thought or the belief that I'm having right now, is it this one? Is it the inner critic that's living up here in my head that's kind of designed to keep me safe and comfortable, that absolutely is all about limiting me to step outside of that, and absolutely will act as a barrier to me meeting my stretch goals and what's important to me, as opposed to, and very distinct and different from that, the inner compass sitting down here in the heart, which is full of possibility actually, and letting us know maybe through an inner voice that maybe something isn't right for us, that we're getting off course, that there's a different path around the corner. Like, how do we actually decipher that? So, and I think that the point I want to illustrate too is that sometimes externally, it could be the same behavior, right? Like the example that comes to my mind is around one from Nia Avery, and she shared that, good friend of mine, in the Pandemic Pen Pals episode that we did together. I'll find the link and post it so you can listen to her. And I don't mean to put words in her mouth, but it was a really good example of how the same behavior externally, the behavior was moving from one place to another, moving to a new place, and how at some points in her life that experience was really full of limiting beliefs, actually, where it was up here, it was this inner critic that was dictating to her, like, you're not good enough, or you don't have the tools to solve this, or and causing her to spiral into like, so I need to go somewhere else. And as opposed to another moment of her life, taking that move like from one coast to the other, that was purely rooted in that inner compass and full of possibility and full of like almost like exhilaration, like I'm stepping into a new, and I'm becoming this person, I'm aspiring to be this, and this is the moment where I'm stepping into that, and really emboldened and empowered by that process. But actually it's the same behavior. So I'm trying to think of some examples where I can dive into the inner mess and try to at least decipher the difference between the two and what it sounded like and looked like. So the first one I can think of for the inner critic is what I call the USB story. Which has become an important story because it was rooted in this moment that threw what had been an extremely strong and core limited belief kind of on its head. And it goes something like this. And you have to know that, I create really powerful experiences for groups of executives and teams and women as well, right? And so for many years, as I was growing my company, and I have to say, I emphasize here, like, I'm not ashamed to say it, this belief was really core, and I carried this limiting belief and this behaviors for like a number of years, where right before a program, I would get quite worked up and kind of, let's call it, there was a bit of a frantic energy to get everything that needed to happen ready to deliver this powerful experience. And the limiting belief was something like, I'm not organized, I procrastinate. I feel like there's another piece to it, but it's like, I'm unorganized, I'm unprofessional, and and kind of frantic. And it was like every experience that I would run and create, that I would find more evidence to support that belief, that's because I kept showing up that way. And even people that were around me and could observe that would point it out to me. And they'd say like, sometimes, in really unproductive examples, it was like, here she goes again, the eye roll and the, arms crossed, and then, and in other times it came from a really, not a place of judgment, but from a place of like, this is a pattern and it's holding you back, and you need to work through it, kind of thing. But each time, even then, when I got that feedback, I felt like it wasn't constructive. It more like made me confirm what I already knew, which is like, I don't have what it takes. And it would cause me to kind of question myself and kind of downward spiral. And I don't even want to put words to that limiting belief. Like, let's not even speak out those words anymore, because flipped another way, it's like, actually, I create. That's the key word. So when I'm designing an experience for people, I'm so passionate and committed to understand where they are and what it's going to take to create that big aha transformation. And that takes a lot of energy and time and space. And that my preparation, while perhaps unconventional, was certainly not unprofessional. And so the USB story came when the caveat in this story is that it is my husband, but at the time he was not. And knowing this about me, I had and that I had a program coming up, I was kind of like, let's just not talk for like, this was a big one too at the time. So it was like, let's just not talk for these 2 or 3 days. And and then he shows up at my door, like knocks on the door, totally unexpected, and he's got a bouquet of flowers. Like I like open the door. I think my hair is like completely all over the place. I'm just like running around. He's like, I think I didn't even like acknowledge the receipt of these flowers. I just kind of like threw them aside and was like, ah, and just continued to do. I was doing it. He kind of looked at me. He maybe even grabbed my shoulder. I can't remember. He was just like, "What can I do? What can I do to help?" And I was like, really? Like what? I just like shoved a USB in his face and was like, go, print. And he's like, before he could even say like, where should I print? The door was like closed in his face and he was tasked to figure it out. And at some point I just remember that this printed stuff, good quality, with the USB sitting on top, like being on my kitchen table. And he had kind of like silently let himself out and given me my space. And then it was carrying into that next program. And by the way, like that experience was so powerful and transformational. And so it was the next time that was happening. It was just like about a week before. It's kind of like, is there going to be some printing for this? And like, can I be helpful at all? Would it be helpful to talk it through, or what could happen? And so it was that was the beginning of like, okay, maybe it isn't just about confirming that this belief is true, but it's about breaking this down and trying to learn some new skills around it. And I know it sounds so obvious now, but it didn't at the time. And there was another limiting belief that was tucked up in there. It was actually showing up more like an unidentified expectation that was embedded in there, that the programs I ran had to have a certain standard of quality of materials that actually, come from running programs over and over and over again. And not to say that the quality of the materials and the experiences that aren't super professional, because they are, but it's also recognizing that creation also gives permission to move off of a perfect sort of process or a structure with everything really glossy and perfect in that way. And so that we can see was so limiting me stepping into the true my real strengths and learning to break that down. So that's an example of that one. And then let's try to think of an example of the inner compass. And I think the best one I can think of is a mentor relationship that I had. I've intentionally, we talked about this 2 videos ago, and surrounded myself with people that have different experiences and perspectives as I've moved through different challenges and key moments in my career. And one mentor gave me some advice pretty strongly. Like, this was maybe around the same time, a few years into growing my consulting firm around the work I was doing. And so she said, if you really want to crush it in this space, you need to niche. And so you need to pick an industry and you need to become, like the expert, like in that, in serving. I mean, we're talking about designing and creating experiences. So she meant for that particular industry. And she's like, even you're going to need to go and work in one of those big, massive organizations that I was doing a lot of these programs for. You're going to need to go and work inside one of those companies for a couple of years. So if this is really the kind of path that you want to take, then that's what you need to do. And I got a strong resistance, a strong reaction when I heard that. And I was aware of that strong reaction and also aware that I had sought her out for her ability to give me a different perspective. And upon more reflection afterwards, it was like this was a voice of like, it's not the right fit. That's not the right advice. No criticism to her, just honest. That isn't the path. No, you're not about niching into that one particular industry, and you're not going to go and work that's not the path for you. It came up and felt like that same kind of, like it felt like a deep reaction. And I wasn't sure, like, is this just a limiting belief? Like, is this me resisting to doing things I don't want to do, or that I'm going to be uncomfortable? Because I would certainly be uncomfortable working in one of these big organizations. And that was the inner compass. That was the inner compass, letting me know that my gift is to help people move out, pull out from their day-to-day, the jargon they use, zoom out from their problems to awaken to new possibility that actually sits out here. And I didn't have the language or the clarity around that at that time, so it was really difficult for me to articulate it or express it in any kind of a way. But the voice, like I knew that wasn't the way. So that's the example of like, I had resistance, but it was good resistance. It was like no, don't go be uncomfortable in that way. Yeah, that's my 2 cents, my reflection on this for now. There's so much more to say. But in the meantime, hey, have a great day. Can you think of some examples from yourself? I'd love to hear.